Thank you.
And I do want to take a moment to introduce, I think, what I feel is always a very special guest, and that's Hilario Romero, who's with the, he's just an ongoing person who believes in a lot of causes. Great writer, has incredible knowledge of the history of the Santa Fe area. I was at a luncheon not long ago when he talked about what he was doing up in Las Vegas with I always forget the name of it, but the old Montezuma Hotel, which is now the United World College. They have a hot springs nearby, and he's done a whole lot of work with that. But it's just an example of some of the things that he's done for the community and for the people of New Mexico. So
Yes.
Welcome, Hilario. It's nice to see you.
Carl, let me, couple things. This is Andy Otto. One, we are recording the meeting now, and it'll be on our website afterwards for review, and you can see the past meetings. Two, I get to introduce Erin Nash, who's our River and Watershed Coordinator here at the Santa Fe Watershed Association. So nothing moves in the watershed without Erin knowing about it. So that's the job.
So I think we did a real quick introduction. Did we, Amara, have you got a sense of who we are?
Yeah, I've watched a couple of these recordings and been to a couple of the meetings. So I'm patching it together. Thank you.
Sounds great. So let's go ahead and get started. And again, I welcome Erin Barton, who is a forest planner with the Forest Service. And the reason we've asked her to attend today's meeting is to discuss what the new Santa Fe Forest Plan management plan impact on the lower Santa Fe River below the wastewater treatment plant. So with that, yes.
One quick one, Carl, I'm sorry, but we should always introduce Bill Schneider from the City of Santa Fe Water Division.
Yes, we did. I thought I did, but yeah. Hi, Bill. Nice to see you.
Morning, everyone.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay, Erin, go ahead.
All right. Thanks for having me, everyone. It's nice to meet you. So what I'm planning to do today is I have kind of a general presentation about the kind of forest plan and the forest plan revision process. And then I've got some notes on specifically how the forest plan supports our management of water resources on the forest. I'll kind of open it up for questions and discussion then as I talk about that. So the general presentation is about 10 minutes. Hopefully, I've never presented on Zoom, so hopefully the presentation works similar to what I'm used to. So bear with me as I attempt to do my screen share. Everybody can hear me, right? Correct?
Yes.
Let's see. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Andy.
There we go. Okay, so I think, yes, this will. Whoops. Okay, I think I want to do this. Okay, and then can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect. And you can see the title screen that says Carson, Santa Fe, and Cibola National Forests.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Okay, so you'll notice there are 3 national forests on this slide, and the reason that is the case will become apparent as I move through this presentation. All 3 forests have worked together to release their final revised land management plans, as well as the final environmental impact statements and our draft records of decision. These documents all reflect extensive public participation over many years, as well as extensive collaboration with our partners and with each other, including our cooperating agencies. So land management plan revision Every national forest is required to have a land management plan under the National Forest Management Act. These plans really guide the Forest Service in how we manage our resources, goods, and services, and they're meant to work over a 10 to 15-year time frame. The documents describe a vision for our desired ecological, cultural, and socioeconomic conditions on the forest and help us map a path for achieving those goals through our project work. And it's important to note that these land management plans are not a list of future projects, so they don't actually say what exactly we will be doing on the forest. Instead, they are intentionally strategic and broad in scope. They do not replace existing framework of laws either, or policies and regulations that we are required to operate within. So generally, they kind of outline the framework in which we will do future work. So the three forest consistency has been a really important part of our planning process. Our three forests, the Carson, Santa Fe, and Cibola National Forests, you can see them all on this map, the different colors. Carson is blue, Santa Fe purple, Cibola green. We all share a landscape with each other and with other landowners and managers in northern and central New Mexico. And we have many similarities in the ecology across ownership and watersheds, wildlife and fire. And the publics that use our forests don't necessarily see the administrative boundaries. You know, people move across the forest and there isn't always a sign that says you're going from Santa Fe to Carson. We also have a long history of human occupation, use, and reliance on these lands that predates the creation of the Forest Service by a very long time. And there are users and stakeholders that have an interest in all three forests as well. And many of these people share a common cultural history, traditions, and values. So we really wanted to work together to facilitate the knowledge of this shared landscape across northern and central New Mexico, which is why we've all kind of been working together on this plan of vision. Because of these similarities in our forests, we've coordinated closely as we revise our land management plan, as I said. Although we do each have an individual plan for each forest, as we do have unique elements, each plan is similar in a lot of ways. This hopefully will mean more consistent forest management across boundaries, especially in relation to restoration and fire management, management of designated areas that we share, and traditional communities and uses like forest products, acequias, grazing, and access for religious and cultural practice. Currently, the forest plans are operating under plans that were developed in the mid-1980s, and each of these plans have been amended multiple times. Under the National Forest Management Act, as I mentioned, land management plans need to be periodically revised, that 10 to 15-year time frame. And between 2013 and 2014, all three forests began the process of revising our plans under the 2012 planning rule. The first step in our process was the assessment, where we assess the current condition and trends on the lands that we manage and in the surrounding landscape. During this process, we asked the public what they valued about the forest and measured ecological, social, cultural, and economic conditions. We published these assessments in 2015 and then used that information to identify the changes that needed to be made to our current land management plans, the 1980 management plans, for the new planning process. So these are the needs for change. So along with the legal requirements to revise, we noted that our existing plans, they were outdated, prescriptive, and inflexible. There's been a lot of new science over the last 40 years that has emerged since these 1980 plans in terms of management of forest, fire management, things like that. We're also facing a lot of challenges that we didn't know about when the plans were originally written. The old plans don't adequately account for the role of fire on the landscape, limitations on water resources, which we are facing a lot of right now, current types of recreation or current demands for recreation and how that's changing, emerging socioeconomic factors, or the effects of climate change on the landscape and many other resources. And we've also learned a lot since we first wrote our plans about how land management plans should be written, and better recognize the importance of traditional communities and partnerships. The old plans really didn't talk much about partnerships at all or collaboration or focus on contributions that forests make to traditional land-based subsistence communities and local economies. These are really key factors in the new plans, which I'll talk about later on. In addition, the revised plans really kind of build on all the lessons that we've learned since we wrote the old plans. Throughout the planning process, all 3 forests had really frequent, robust, and multifaceted public participation. This included soliciting multiple rounds of public feedback on working drafts of our documents, government-to-government consultation with tribes, and coordinating with cooperating agencies like state and local governments, the SACIs, and land grants. And the Santa Fe specifically worked with 13 cooperating agencies throughout our process. Together with our publics, we have worked to develop a shared vision of how we want to manage multiple uses, restore ecosystems, and support our local communities, as well as connecting people with the land, or helping those who already have a connection with the land. Our plans are meant to describe that shared understanding of the work that we agreed that we need to do, as well as represent what the public values. So there are several key themes that run through our new plans, and these allow us to address the challenges that we're currently facing in northern and central New Mexico and on into the future. We're looking specifically at an ecosystem-based approach that's really less prescriptive than our old plans, with a focus on restoration to improve function and to provide those forest products that the public value. We also focus on providing benefits to wildlife habitat. Through monitoring, continued learning, and adaptations, the plans have the ability to address changing stressors, such as climate and wildfire. We can address these better through this adaptive management and building resiliency, and we can also better meet emerging uses and trends. There's also a new focus in the plans on the socioeconomic contributions from the national forests. New plans support local communities by maintaining or increasing socially and economically valuable products and services. So there's support for timber, livestock grazing, recreation, and clean water for drinking and irrigation. And these are all really important elements of our publics that people have commented to us throughout our process. So because we've heard so much from all our publics, we really wanted to focus on our traditional communities and the forest resources that people in New Mexico are using for subsistence, for cultural practices, for religious ceremonies, things like fieldwood gathering, hunting, etc. Finally, as I mentioned, all the plans really emphasize partnership and shared resources to increase our capacity to do projects, especially in areas like recreation, restoration, and monitoring, really working with all the other communities that value forests. Our plans really emphasize our commitment to cooperating with others. We worked really hard to incorporate local and traditional knowledge and the shared goals that we'd all like to work towards with our forests. So a little bit about the timelines. Each forest released a draft plan at the end of 2019 for public comment. That was a 90-day public comment period, and we have reviewed all those comments and responded to each one. You can see our response to comments in an appendix to each forest EIS. For the Santa Fe, that's volume 4 of the EIS, and that is on our website. You can also view the changes that resulted in our final plans and our final analysis, and that is also in the EIS. Each forest supervisor has written a draft record of decision that explains how the forest considered comments, made changes, and arrived at our final plans. This document provides the rationale for changes from the draft plan to the final plan, and these are also available online. You can see the links there. I'm also happy to provide those later if you'd like. These are draft decisions because there is still a final objection step before we can start using these plans. And that objection step is currently the part of the process that we are in now. We are each in a 60-day objection period, of which I think there are 2 weeks left. During this time, people and organizations who have previously submitted a comment are eligible to file an objection based on the issues raised in that previous comment. You can learn more about each forest objection process and the requirements for filing an objection on the forest website listed on this page. And we also have some nice little flyers that really do a good job at explaining the objection process if you're interested in reading those. At the conclusion of this objection filing period, we'll work with objectors to resolve their concerns. Following the resolution, the forest supervisor will sign a final record of decision, and we'll finally be able to begin implementing our new forest plans. We're expecting to reach that step next summer if all goes well, and hopefully we'll be able to start using these as we implement our projects. These are some contact information for each forest. You can also contact me. I'm not up there because I just got back from a detail with a different part of the Forest Service, but I can give you my email if you'd like to contact me also. Right, so that was the kind of overview of the process and kind of the general how we came to create our plans and what our goals are with them. And I did want to you guys are all focused on water resources as your main one. So I did want to share some of the elements of how we're specifically supporting water resources through our plans. And I'm just going to talk about the Santa Fe now because although all the plans are very similar, especially in terms of how we're looking at riparian areas, water resources, restoration, the formats are different and stuff. So with the Santa Fe, and you can see all of these on our website, and I can show you that if you'd like through a screen share. But we do have an entire section that's focused on water resources, another one that's riparian and wetland ecosystems, a section that focuses on aquatic habitats and species. And then we have elements of that discuss water in our livestock grazing section and in our traditional communities and uses section. And all of these we have desired conditions, which are they kind of describe the vision of what we're looking to get at with each resource. We have desired conditions that really support habitat diversity, habitat health and connectivity. So looking at the diversity of species within in the aquatic habitats, ensuring connectivity of our water resources, as well as looking at multiple uses. So, making sure those water resources are also available for recreation, traditional cultural uses, livestock grazing, and municipal water use. We do have restoration objectives for watershed health, riparian ecosystem health, as well as aquatic habitats and restoring native fish to streams, as well as we also have objectives about invasive species, which kind of connect to the native fish part. So clearing out invasive species. Our standards and guidelines are largely for management purposes. So kind of outlining the framework in which our projects can operate. So we use those to look to protect water quality and aquatic habitat quality from management activities or other forest uses such as recreation or grazing or restoration work, even if it, we can be working for restoration for long-term gain, but there's usually a short-term impact as you're doing the restoration. We also have desired conditions in our traditional communities and uses section that look to support acequia access and maintenance on the forest. So that we worked with our acequia partners during creation to get those plan components in there. And as I mentioned kind of during the presentation, the whole plan is really focused on partnership and collaboration. So there's a lot of management approaches that suggest certain entities to work with, governments, NGOs, where we really want to collaborate on some of these projects. And I'm going to stop there for a minute and just kind of let people ask questions or digest before I just keep talking.
That sounds good. Darren, you have some questions? Or Tricia, maybe? I think we lost Erin for a second. I guess one of the things we were talking to just if there's anything specific to the lower watershed, I mean, we're talking, when we talk about we lower Santa Fe River, we generally talk from the wastewater treatment plant, which is near the airport, down to La Bajada. And so we're curious as to what this plan might do or impact that particular section of the river.
So the plans don't prescribe projects or locations on the forest where we'd implement management. They just kind of outline how we would do that management if it occurred. So the projects would still be decided on the ground by our resource management experts. So there isn't any kind of projects outlined within the plan itself. It's more these kind of water resource plan components that will guide the project implementation when it occurs.
And I think desired conditions is key there too. So just to, I'm sorry, I did get off to go toggle over to the plan, to the management plan. So I'm seeing the breakdown. Yes, it's very strategic in nature and non-prescriptive. So that's what the document's supposed to be doing. What I'm concerned about is that even though it's on that strategic level, you mentioned that there were 13 consultation with 13 local stakeholder groups. Is that right?
13 cooperating agencies. So that's a specific designation where we make a memorandum of understanding with a government agency.
Right.
And they work with us.
Were you considering ASECAs as subdivisions of the state of New Mexico, or how was that relationship?
Yeah, we consider those as subdivisions of the state of New Mexico. And let me. Okay,
so you had tribes, ASECAs, and county or municipal government. Because what I'm puzzled, because we had for 10 years the Española District Ranger attending these collaborative meetings, and I don't see the Santa Fe River Traditional Communities Collaborative listed as either a contributor or in acknowledgement. And we had Sandy Herlocker attending these meetings for a decade. So not sure where we missed the boat on getting our focused public input put in through the collaborative. Kind of sorry that not to see that there. So we have, I guess, until November 2nd to express that, right? And have maybe that included in the objection resolution period before we get a final signed plan. Is that correct?
Yes. So for this objection period, if you commented previously in any of the comment periods, then you can bring up an objection during this period related to your previous comment, and we'll start the objection process through that.
Okay.
And just to let you know.
And short of that, we're supposed to still look at a 10 to 15 year repeating cycle where that just because it may not be included in the current management plan doesn't mean that I guess, collaborative relationship couldn't be established between these communities in this forum and the Forest Service going forward, right?
Yes, correct. So yeah, so we would definitely be able to continue this relationship. In fact, I think we really emphasize the benefits of collaboratives and working with community partners in this plan. So that would definitely be something we'd be interested in moving forward. And I don't know if you know, but there's a new district ranger in Española, Sandy Imler Hawkes. So Sandy Herlocker retired just recently.
Right. So we need that introduction. And if you would please extend the invitation to the new district ranger to be attending these meetings regularly, because again, that's the thing. I'm super disappointed that our ongoing relationship that we thought we had with the Forest Service is somehow unrequited. So the other thing, if I can draw this out, is I noticed in the management plan, there's a Caja del Rio wildlife and cultural interpretive corridor special management area. And again, as there's ongoing discussions with the traditional communities up and down the river here, you know, the very eastern, I guess, boundary is the Cañada de Santa Fe, the lower river coming all the way from La Ciénaga to La Bajada. So I think that as far as lists of contributors or collaborative relationships, they're the only two agencies listed in that portion of the plan are Los Alamos National Laboratories and Cochiti Pueblo. So I think we need to broaden the scope on that as well and include the communities on the eastern end of the Caja del Rio Plateau that are, you know, again, that's where we tie into the bigger strategies for riparian health and healthy wildlife habitat. And again, we kind of missed the plug-in on that one. So I think that would be really neat to start seeing, again, regular Forest Service participation in the collaborative. And then I guess we've got to do a better job of documenting all that so that it is included in the living document that is the, you know, actual land management plan or whatever subsequent revision there is now.
Can you tell me the names of those groups again? It was at the lower Caja.
For the Caja del Rio Special Management Area, the only two groups are Los Alamos National Laboratories and Cochiti Pueblo that I found mentioned in the plan. So maybe you could guide me to somewhere else that's discussed more thoroughly, and maybe there's some reflection of the other conversations that these communities have had with the Forest Service. I don't know.
So are you looking for?
I just haven't found it yet.
No, I'm just trying to figure out, when you say listed in the plan, are you talking about cooperating agencies, or I'm just not quite sure what you're referencing?
Yes, cooperating agencies or other, I guess, stakeholders, and sometimes they're listed and sometimes they're not. So it's interesting in that it may not be that those were agencies or cooperating agencies that submitted formal public comment, or it may be, and that's what I'm just trying to nail down. Did the collaborative fail to express our views and interests in the proper format, or did we just kind of think we had an ongoing relationship with the Forest Service and the district ranger that really wasn't? There was not a complete closure of the feedback loop there, apparently. So I'm just kind of wondering how we blew that. That's all.
Well, so the cooperating agencies are a specific designation that can only be created with another government agency. So that's why you only see like the county government. I'm trying to remember who we had. We have like Tesuque Pueblo, some of the soil and water conservation districts, and all these that are official government agencies. So that particular designation, I don't think this group would have been eligible for. As for
with the exception of the secas that are political subdivisions of the state, yeah, under statute 73. This is why I brought that up in the first place now. But so, okay, well then that's interesting, because I think it gives us a little bit of a map forward into where we should, you know, one of the boxes we have to check to make sure that we're adhering to the administrative procedure that gets our feedback actually into the plan. So we have something that can be taken from the strategic level to the implementation level, you know, particularly in the Santa Fe National Forest. So cool.
And the county, the county is one of the listed jurisdictions, correct, Erin? The county of Santa Fe?
Yes.
Okay. Can we comment on their comments?
So the comment period is closed.
Yeah, I meant that. Can we? Yeah.
So I mean, if you had commented during the, can you comment on their comments?
Well, I guess we have to get them to comment if we have a challenge.
I think the question was, could you object on comments that they made?
Yes.
Their comments for standing for your objection.
So if they would have to object based on their comments. So if you had made a comment, if any of you, either as yourselves or representing an organization, had made a comment during the whole plan revision process, then you could object, but you cannot object on someone else's comment.
Okay.
You can have a discussion about it, but it wouldn't be part of the
Yeah.
official objection process.
Okay.
Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to discern. So maybe the mission is not to meet the November 2nd deadline for objection and spend time going down that path, when what we should be doing is looking ahead and establishing a more robust relationship with the Forest Service at this time, and working towards the next 10 to 15 year development period, but making sure we are in under the canopy, you know?
Yes, I would agree with that, Darren, but I also think there's potential to address what we want to address through projects. If I'm understanding you correctly, Erin, this doesn't outline projects and say that. So we can come up with projects that address your strategic goals for our area. And that might be another way to have an impact on our portion of the river.
Right
Yes,
on.
I think
Excellent point.
that's true, Felicity.
Okay, good.
I wanted to comment on, I went twice to the Forest Service building at Forest Lane, and I submitted written comments, and I never, handwritten ones, right, on their little input sheet. And I never really saw them in the plans at all. And basically, I'm from Agua Fria Village, and the Caja del Rio Grant area is our traditional area for piñon picking and hunting and fuel wood gathering, that type of thing. And people really, they'll go up with the whole family and have a picnic and set up a tent, really go to town. And they've been doing it for probably 400 years, as well as some of the other traditional communities downstream. And, twice before in the 90s, we applied to be a steward, under the stewardship program that the Forest Service had. And I actually wrote 2 letters to Washington, D.C. on that particular matter. But then, of course, the stewardship program was being redone in the Federal Register. And then it had to be redone again, and nothing ever happened. And, I've told my sad story to Darren, of course, but also to Garrett Van Cleason in New Mexico Wild. And they have that whole initiative that Darren is really working closely on, and our village is fully supporting. And I don't know how we insert that into this plan. And I would defer to Darren on this.
Well, that's why I brought up that connection to the communities on the eastern end of the plateau, because there is already a designation in the plan for specifically, it's called a wildlife and cultural resource interpretation special management area. And it's already kind of the ungerminated seed there. That's where I think the next step is to, like Felicity says, to start looking at developing projects within that desired condition, right?
Yeah.
But what disturbs me is that you've got 2 listed stakeholders there, right? In the boilerplate of that special management area are the labs and only 1 pueblo, and not to mention the complete just failure to acknowledge the traditional communities from Agua Fria to La Ojana, and including Peña Blanca. The thing to remember is that the Caja del Rio, that plateau is ejido for all these different communities. It's been the common land for all these different communities, Pueblo and Hispano, and like you say, where we do our harvesting and our foraging, where we do our livestock and sustainable food security production, and on a different level, where we go to renew our spirits and our souls, because it's that I don't think can be emphasized enough. And I don't mean it to sound trite or cliche, but it's important to understand that people's souls are tied to that, this land and this environment specifically. So, and I think that's where the impetus for stewardship and for involvement and all that comes from. But that can be, I think, implemented within this plan. So again, I think it's a matter of getting the projects together and getting the. I think we've already got the opening within the plan. So I just want to, maybe it's not an objection. How do we submit some other or get some other input that starts working toward that implementation? But I think we need the recognition of those communities. So maybe it's a corrective note or a note on omission, an errata or something that we can submit in lieu of an actual objection on whatever somebody else's comment or whatever.
Are you discussing?
Darren, that was so well said. The other thing is our little group that we haven't, formalized, the Friends of the Kaha. How does this come into play?
Go ahead, Erin.
Oh, I was asking, when you say the boilerplate for that management, are you talking about the narrative description? I'll share the screen. I'll just make sure that we're on the same page.
Let's look at it. Yeah, it's inside a text box, I guess.
Can you see this?
Got it. There you go.
Talking about this?
No, it's not there. It's I believe it's here. 5 years of plan. What the heck is it? It mentions. Did you just do a control find?
No, this is the section for the Caja del Rio Wildlife Cultural.
Right. Okay. So I can't manipulate your document, but I think if you look for LANL within it, and we'll come up with where it's at.
Oh, right here. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's seems rather meager in terms of a stakeholder collaborative participation in making management approaches for this, when the cultural interpretation extends well to the eastern end of the plateau and up and down the Santa Fe River Canyon. So that's where we're lacking here, is we need to flesh that out and really get the other end of the plateau to define that whole micro environment.
Okay, so the management approaches are kind of suggestions that we list for our project managers. So they're not prescriptive. So these are things that we would ask our land managers on the ground to look at these and consider for their project implementation. And this list of cross-agency collaboration is just an example. So this isn't a end-all be-all list. These were just some of the ones that had come up, but we would expect that, so you wouldn't look at this and be like, oh, that's the only agencies in that area. So you see that a lot in this number 1 in our management approaches, usually references collaboration, and we just reference, a few examples of potential organizations that someone who's working on a project might want to contact. But it's not supposed to be a end all be all list of everyone, usually because there's quite a lot of.
I appreciate that, but what we don't see as an example is a land grant community, an acequia, or one of our other types of traditional communities. So it just seemed to me that, yes, although those are limited examples of two different kinds, one a federal agency and the other a sovereign nation, it didn't seem to me that the example of traditional communities, land grant communities, or maybe I was just supposed to assume that that's Northern New Mexico forest management policy under the Hearst doctrine anyway. But I think it deserves being a little more specified, even on the level of just being a general example, because you have two specific types or classes of cooperating agency that there are examples of there. And there's no applicable example to I think the traditional communities or sectors.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I did want to point out, we do have this other section in the plan. I don't know if you saw it, that really focuses on rural historic communities. We have a guideline. Can you see this? Is it too small? We have a guideline number 4 that
That's
talks about.
pretty good. I'm just trying to get the page numbers.
It's 108.
108, thank you.
And we do have this guideline number 4, that's coordination with land grants and a governing bodies should occur at the early stages of planning and project design to include local perspectives, needs, concerns, and traditional knowledge. It doesn't reference the CAHA specifically, but we do have that guideline in there for all projects.
That's even better. Yeah, thank you.
One thing about the plan that so it's meant to be very integrated. So often you will see, so every component that's in every resource still kind of works with the other resources. So you can't just like look only at water if you're interested in water, because everything on the land affects water. So looking throughout the whole plan, maybe using Command F is what I like to do. But kind of just skimming through the whole thing really kind of gets the landscape level integration that we're kind of aiming for. It does make it a little bit more difficult to find exactly what you want because we have all these different resources, but we've been trying to emphasize that with everyone, that it's really an integrated document.
Erin, Hiladio's got a question.
Sorry, I can't see with the screen share. Let me close out of this.
Hiladio, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but I have kind of a general comment. One of the things that I've always seen in the past with the relationships of national government agencies, including the Forest Service and traditional communities, is that most of the personnel that are in these agencies are usually from somewhere else. They don't understand the history of the area. And one thing that I have always offered is a presentation for them, a training for them when they first come on the job, so that they can understand where they are and what the situation is. And I'm talking about from the beginning, as I do everything, as I do my writing, my historical writing, I tell the whole story. And that whole story is really important for government agencies to know if they're going to be on the ground here in New Mexico, especially in this particular area. And I've done some of that with other agencies, but with BLM and USDA Forest Service, there has never been an interest really in doing that sort of thing. And they would rather, I guess, just explore it on their own. The problem is that so many histories that are written, if you're looking to go the book route, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of stuff, because that just gives you kind of what I call the general perspective. If you read my series of articles that I did in the Greenfire Times, they start from the very upper reaches of the Santa Fe River, which is, the watershed area, the upper watershed area, from Rio Arriba de Santa Fe, which was its own community and village called, now called now with a different name, it's called Cerro Gordo. And you run all the way down through Santa Fe, the Barrio Venalco, which was the most productive area in Santa Fe. The other side of the river wouldn't have succeeded, including the plaza, if they wouldn't have survived without the Barrio Venalco, because it stretches all the way to Ala Fria. And then the series of grants, land grants, Pacheco grant, La Cienega grant, La Bajada grant, La Majada. That was all one compact traditional area where people cooperated with each other, traded with each other, and it's only for that reason that they sustained themselves for 4 centuries. And so what I'm trying to say is here we are in the present, and so many of these federal agencies, and it's not the fault of the staff, it's the fault of the general way in which they administer these agencies. They're sending people all over the place. What they should do is have people who are on the ground here, who understand the history, who have grown up here, who have had boots on the ground. And when you have that, then you don't have to go through the whole thing of telling the whole story. You have some of the story. And so that's what I would offer. Again, I've done it with the National Park Service, and they were very open to me to have them go in and train some of their folks. And I think that's once you understand that, then when you do a plan, you can be more inclusive. And you don't have to go through, oh, we're going to have only a 60-day period to do this, or we're going to have objections to that, and so on and so forth, because it leaves so many people out. And that's because not people are working. Some people are working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. It's hard to be able to keep on top of all of these things that go on and these changes. I'm really glad the Forest Service is now changing, and updating, because this is the problem we had in the past. And now I'm hoping this future plan will, and what it includes, will get to the bottom of it, and these people will be educated and understand the whole story. Thank you.
Eladio, you're absolutely right on. I really appreciate that information. And Erin, I really appreciate you being here. I think what we really want to do is develop a better relationship, an ongoing relationship with the Forest Service, because you're such an important part of that lower Santa Fe watershed. And so we encourage you or someone from the Forest Service to attend. We'll keep you informed. We do a lot of interesting things, and we write quite a bit of stuff too. And Eladio, I was wondering if those articles you did for Green Fire Times are in one place that we could send to Erin, so she'd have an opportunity to look at it and have a real sense of your passion and your understanding of the history of this area.
Well, the Green Fire Times has a website, greenfiretimes.com. And I believe most of them are on there. I know they had to do an update on their website, and an upgrade actually. And I'm hoping that they kept all of the stuff in there. I haven't checked lately, but I'm hoping they're all on there.
Well, let's try that as a first stop. But I really appreciate this, Erin. And I know you're hearing a lot of things you probably weren't expecting to hear today. But again, it goes to the passion of the people who have lived in this area for centuries. And yeah, we've been overlooked at times. They have been overlooked over the years. So this is an opportunity to connect with a federal agency on a really positive level. So thank you very much. And we're going to go on to the next part of our agenda, which is the pipeline agreement, city-county pipeline agreement, which was signed by the city last night. It is approved. It will be posted soon, and it starts the ball rolling. And I am the spokesperson for the Pipeline Coalition. And I can tell you this has been a very fast-moving, kind of exciting moment for people who care about the Santa Fe River. And I really mean that. I mean, this is the one time in my experience in as a community organizer for over 25 years that I really feel that we have a foot in the door and an opportunity to do something really good for the river. And it's not been easy. And I don't know, I've tried to keep everybody kind of informed, and I'm going to kind of just do a general overview, and I will apologize in advance for rambling a bit, because There's a lot to say, a lot of things that have gone on. Go ahead, Andy. You're muted. I can't hear you, Andy.
I was just going to point out, Bill Schneider has to bug out of here in about 5 minutes with the city. If we had any questions for him, we should probably get into those now.
And I
And
can bring some of those back to him also if you guys
Oh,
pick those back.
okay.
I forgot Andrew's here. Andrew, welcome.
Excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was a couple minutes late, but I'm here. Sorry.
Let me,
Great.
let me ask two specifically for Bill before he splits, if you're there, Bill. Do we have, now that the agreement has been signed, do we have an idea of when we'll do the official opening of the NEPA scoping?
Yeah, yes, we do, Darren. So the scoping will be announced on October 20th. And the actual scoping will occur on November 2nd and November 3rd.
Okay. And that's Federal Register publication date,
Correct.
October 20th.
Correct.
Cool. And then can you, the other question was, if you could clarify for me, please, how I guess BDD is holding the applicable NEPA permits. And so what exactly are the permits and how will they be modified? And that, because I think your plan is to go for an environmental assessment, correct? Not a full draft environmental impact statement?
That is correct.
Okay.
We are seeking an EA.
Okay. So how does that work? And that, so I guess if you help me put it together, the idea would be to get just an EA based on already existing permits from the Buckman diversion.
Yeah, so, and I'll send you a list, but we view that the BDD is effectively SP 4842 is the permit, which allows us to divert water out of the Rio Grande. And in the case of the city, Darren, it's only for us to divert our San Juan Chama project water.
Right.
We don't intend to reopen that permit. What we intend to do, and this is where the nexus is with the return flow plan application, is to seek the ability to redivert our San Juan Chama water through the return flow plan. And that's really why we were always trying to convey to the coalition the need to sync up the OSC work with the NEPA work.
Right. But I mean, part of it is that you need to be able to clear the discharge from the effluent back to even the location below the Buckman diversion, right? But so it's a modification of an existing permit, correct? Or is it an application for a new permit that requires separate scoping?
I view it as latter.
Okay, that's the desired condition, right? Is to switch it away from being dependent on the supply permit and have it be clear so that it supports, it's that the previous permit would support the environmental assessment that there's no impact because the discharge is below the diversion point in the first place, right?
Correct.
And then we'd like to have separate, I guess, quality criteria based on that outfall back into the Rio Grande, but knowing that it's not directly contributing to the same diversion because of stream flow or what have you, no?
I agree, Darren, and that would be dealt with through an MPDES permit that will be unique to this project.
There you go. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions before Bill takes off?
And I can stay a few more minutes. I didn't mean to mess up the schedule. I apologize.
Okay, it worked out fine.
You know, and maybe if I may just ask a question of the collaborative would be, I really liked what Hilario proposed, and as the city and the county embark with the collab and the coalition to develop this lower Santa Fe River planning process, I'm very interested in potentially having Hilario under contract, maybe provide that sort of baseline history. So we are sort of all working from the same deck of cards, so to speak. So I would propose that as something I think we could all advocate for.
Excellent idea. That's an excellent idea, Bill. And we'll do everything in our power to make it happen. We'll support it completely and totally. And I think I'll certainly mention it to the coalition as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
That's the kind of stuff that we need to be doing. And again, it just reaffirms my opinion of this process as being something really special and important, and something that in many regards, I hope that we can carry over into other community-related issues and projects, not just water. But now again, I'm going to ramble a bit. So we have the pipeline agreement. It's adopted and formal. It's not formalized. It's still got to be posted. I think it's some official process that needs to go through. But the process has been pretty interesting. And it really started in April when we wrote a letter to the city saying, "Hey, we know what you're proposing to do, and we want to participate and be involved." And obviously, the collaborative took a leadership position. But when the Acequia Association, New Mexico Acequia Association, and the New Mexico Acequia Commission got involved, it got a lot more serious, and that's when we started talking about forming. That's when we decided to form a coalition, and we reached out to various groups. We now have 19 groups, organizations, associations, acequias that are involved in this group, and we really haven't done made any attempt to recruit any further than that, and that's something we may start to talk about sometime soon. But we've had very detailed and involved Zoom meetings to discuss our positions. And after the agreement was signed with the county commissions, one of the things the coalition talked about is to send out a letter of expectation to both the city council and to the county commission to really clarify. I mean, the language in the agreement is typically vague, and it should be. It's general kind of things we can do. And we really want to be very specific about some of the expectations we have from this agreement. And it's in draft form. It's not something we're prepared to share right now. But we spent probably 3 or 4 hours going over this, and I think we've come up with something that's pretty sharp. And some of you have already participated, and Darren, Tricia, and William were all part of that group in defining our expectations. And it's just in a moment when we have an opportunity to reach out to our government officials and say, "Hey, this is what we need." And it really takes into account all the issues that we've had with this now 55-year-old treatment plant, 1966 to 2021. And one of my frustrations in this bill, and Andrew, certainly that you can carry back, is the separation between the water department and the wastewater treatment folks. They're over there, you're over there. And to me, it doesn't make any sense, because you gotta be better connected than that. And so we have obviously have had ongoing concerns about how that treatment plant's been operated forever. And it doesn't seem to get better. And we have questions right now about its operations. And so those are the kind of things that we want to address in this mitigation plan. And I'm using the word mitigation. That gets to be really touchy, because you're not supposed to use it because it's in the NEPA document, but it really is. That's what we're talking about, is the mitigation
legitimately
plan. But the mitigation plan is something that is going to take all of us working together to figure out how we're going to be able to protect the history, the traditions of the river, which are extensive, how we can protect the ecosystem, the river's ecosystem, and all that it means. And we do this in light that we're going to see an estimated 50% reduction in the flow of the river. And so these are all challenges that we're going to have to work through and talk about. And again, one of the things we're going to do, the process right now, the plan is, as far as the county is concerned, the county is going to kind of oversee this process, but they're going to contract a facilitator fairly quickly and start to have meetings. The first part of that will be just kind of a scoping to look at the scope of what we want to attempt or what we want to get done. So there'll be a facilitator hired for that. And the second part of that will be starting to work with all the stakeholder groups. We want to make sure every stakeholder group that or person who wants to participate has the opportunity to do that. And so we'll look at ways that we can identify all the different stakeholders and stakeholder groups. That's one of the things we really haven't done yet is gotten really specific about the different stakeholder groups. The one that has already been meeting has been doing a great job is Darren's group with the Asakia group, or downstream irrigators, I think is what we're using. Darren, you want to talk a little bit about your experience so far with that?
I will, because it's key, and I think it's key in defining the difference between the Pipeline Coalition and the Santa Fe River Traditional Communities Collaborative. So the first thing I need to do is acknowledge that Bill's here, Bill Schneider's here and participating, and also acknowledge that as far as from the city, Andrew has been the most consistently present, I guess, city presence and an excellent contributor and collaborator, right? And that's the nature of this group, as I've seen it over the last decade, has been in developing consensus and doing the heightening of awareness. And if the city system was not disjointed between its supply side and its discharge side, right, we probably would have seen our conservation manager here, more consistently. So super glad to see you, Bill. And I just got your other message, and yes, it's totally applicable to what we're looking at is a more holistic approach to this whole thing. And so I admire and respect your suggestion that we get a consistent historical briefing from Hilario Romero, who, like you say, it tells the good, the bad, and the ugly, but puts it all right there for everyone to see exactly what the lingering competing interests from ancient history might be in our present day relationships with each other, especially with U.S. government agencies, and the relationship of trust. I think this is what goes lost on a lot of say Forest Service and BLM personnel, is those two agencies in particular have been put into a position of trust for the traditional communities in managing our common lands, much the same way that the Department of the Interior has a duty of trust to sovereign nations, right, through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that's just a function of territorial New Mexico and how we developed into the modern state that we are now. That relationship exists between the communities and the federal agencies. So, and again, I got to acknowledge the fact that Bill is turning around a pattern of poor communication between the city and the neighbor and sister communities down the lower Santa Fe River. And so that's super positive to see. So that's what I see very clearly as has been the work of this collaborative, is getting staff and interagency cooperation and all kinds of diverse stakeholders together. And then you look at what we've been doing through the mechanics of this through the Pipeline Coalition, right? And that's been more specific in, I see it as finally having bridged the gap between that disconnect between city water supply and what's coming out of that plant. So my biggest question really, Bill, is regarding this grant, because the plant is central to both the return flow credit scheme that only works with a functional plant, regardless of what the permitting is. And of course, I have my views on why it's disjointed, because it's reactive to to who's regulating what. So it's only, meeting the minimum requirement that we have to do. But this is our opportunity now to look towards responsible social governance and economic and environmental justice and start looking at tying those things together for the future. So that's kind of the more ethereal view from the collaborative, but as we approach it in terms of the coalition, we have very specific duties in front of us to address permitting and procedure and planning. So a key element in all of this is the wastewater treatment plant, and I'm still confused about what the potential $6 million grant that's coming. Is that for rehabilitation of the plant? Is it for replacement of the plant? Is it somewhat open-ended? Is it for direct potable reuse options or what?
So I'll address that question. And Darren, I really like how you synthesize the holistic approach. So thank you for that. And I believe, and I will speak maybe for the county and the city here, that the whole idea of coming together through the collaborative and coalition through this lower Santa Fe planning process is to go above and beyond, as you deem, the baseline with respect to the NEPA requirements that will come out of this process on the federal side. To specifically answer your question regarding the grant is an award for $6 million under the Title 16 program under Water Smart, as managed by the Bureau of Reclamation, and it is specific to the San Juan Chama return project. So it can only be used towards the design and build of the project if the city decides to proceed. But I will maybe take the pause here to mention also, with the ARPA funding available now, as well as with the Biden infrastructure bill that will go through eventually here, those are specific to water and wastewater projects. And I am definitely leading the initiative to find additional funding. And certainly the wastewater treatment plant will be part of that.
Okay, so that's the clarification, I guess, is that the 6 million is specifically, say, for construction or maybe rehabilitation of the existing Las Campanas pipeline or whatever to
Yes, just specific to the San Juan Chama return project. Very specific.
Okay. All right. So, but maybe that's what we need to now. Let's plant that seed here, is that we need to continue that discussion on what we can do to support requests for allocation of funding to either rehabilitate or replace the plant, right? And take advantage of the wastewater infrastructure or Western Waters, all of that package that we hope is coming forward. So we got to all put that on the radar, right?
I would agree. And I think arm in arm again with the coalition collaborative and the government is with support. Our projects will rise to the top, and there certainly will be opportunities to what I would say is fast track upgrades to the wastewater plant that are already in the master plan. But again, time and money are of the essence here. And so I think
so I guess what I'm suggesting is, while we're doing this and we're getting into the phase of establishing and making underway the lower Santa Fe River management mitigation plan, we better not forget that a planning element includes securing funding for that plant, which is it is a de facto source, right? And so we have to, that's where we can address our quality and quantity issues. But I think it's important too. I wanted to touch on something you were saying, is there that 50% reduction is, I think, correctly described as a 50% reduction in discharge from the plant. That may not mean a 50% reduction in flow down the river as we know it now. So there are, again, specific countermeasures or implementation items that we have to handle in terms of stream channel, in terms of water quality. But just because you're not seeing the same amount, I think I'm finally hearing what you've been saying, Bill, so straighten me out if I'm wrong, that the 50% reduction is to be considered as outfall from the plant, not necessarily in flow in the river if we're managing that stream properly.
Bravo. Thank you. That's been a tough message, but that is absolutely clearly stated. Agreed. and I can elaborate, I guess, if given the pause. Again, through operational measures, through conservation, again, on the non-potable reuse system, for example, through reductions in groundwater pumping, which I think is a significant contributor to the depletions that are occurring in La Cienega. And again, focusing on infrastructure funding, there are measures that even the county in my conversations are exploring to address some of the shortages occurring in La Cienega, which I've always advocated is a unique hydrologic system. So again, Darren, I don't want to take us too deep into the weeds here, but let's please keep the dialogue open. I think we have a common goal.
But get ready and be ready to start putting mitigation plan meetings on your schedule, because those are the things like we were talking about. Those are the things under 14,001 that need to be identified. And then you're responsible for making your own statement on how the city intends to meet those goals. But the beginning of it, where we do our scoping for that plan, as Carl describes, that's where we lay these out, and we lay those out as specific target objectives. But I just want to be clear that that's a really big one, is getting those resources, because what you want to call it, the elephant in the room or whatever, is that plan. We can't expect it to do what we're envisioning it doing, even for this working return flow pipeline, without having some serious attention, which may just be, that's it, you know.
All I could say is we're committed to the process and to address those concerns through this collaborative and other measures.
Bill, is that anybody, like, one of the things we've talked about is maybe having a third-party entity look at that treatment plant and assess it and make a decision as to whether or not it's worth fixing. Because again, it's 66 years old and it certainly has its share of problems, and it just seems they just continue to kind of continue on and continue on. And we're wondering if it just wouldn't make sense to do something that's more efficient, does a better job. And certainly we've had some discussions with Erin English with the biohabitats, and there are systems out there now that would use a whole lot less energy, that would do a much better job. And so that's one of the things we want to bring as the collaborative. We want to bring forward and just say, look at this and see what you think about this idea and see. And I do want to address the thing about La Cienega, which obviously is pretty important to me. But there are a number of things. I've talked to John Dupuy at length. And we were able to obtain $150,000 water resources infrastructure planning grant or fund from the legislature. So we've got $150,000 that we're going to work on infrastructure water planning. So we're pretty excited about that. But there are a couple things that are in the works, basically, I think. One of them is the county quill pen treatment plant. And I guess they've redone it, and they've made it a much better system. But one of the things that John Dupuy and I have talked about is using that water that comes out of that to recharge the aquifer. And obviously one of the questions about that would be the quality of water. We want to make sure we're putting clean water. And I've already been in touch with Stacy Timmons, and she's made some suggestions on the best place to put that water. So that's almost in the works now. It certainly, we have the support of the county, and obviously the community of La Cienega completely and totally support it. The other thing is, one of the other things is the 4 wells at the El Dorado that are in the Tesuque Ancha formation. And we have the La Cienega Valley Association wrote a letter to Steve King, the executive director of the El Dorado area district, El Dorado area water and sanitation district, to ask them, when they get the Canyoncito pipeline that goes through at the end of next year, and they're going to be using water off that line from the county, is to take those wells offline, because those are the ones that Peggy Simmons and Peggy Johnson and Stacy Timmons identified many years ago in terms of affecting the springs of La Cienega. And the third part is bringing in county water into Upper La Cienega. And I think that's probably what's going to come out of the infrastructure planning process. And so if we can do those three things, I think we have an opportunity to really start to see the springs come back a little bit. And so those are things that we'll advocate in terms of helping the health of and flow of the river. Old timers sometimes have told me that there would be at times that the La Cienega Creek would be running just as full as the Santa Fe River. And so we're hoping we can bring it back to some form of that in the future. But again, this is a moment in time where really, go ahead, Bill. It's your
Oh,
turn.
no, thank you, Carl. You said it Abel, perfectly. And again, I think there's so much positive happening. Mike Dozier, our wastewater director, is not on this call today because he is meeting with El Dorado right now. They're exploring the possibility of taking their wastewater all the way back to the Quill plant, which would then bring it back into La Cienega.
Wow.
So that's a huge development, again, in concept. And then Carl, I thought it was, you were aware of this, but the city is working with the US EPA right now, doing a life cycle analysis on the Paseo Real Water Reclamation Facility. Again, coming into developing our next phase of our NPDES permit. So again, these are all positive actions. Again, these things take time and they take money. And so trying to tie this all together, hopefully through this planning process, is the way, again, to Darren's point, we capture the objectives and then define the metrics and then manage them into the future. So we're on board.
If we know that, and see, yeah, Mike isn't here today. When we talked to him previously, he was talking about the life cycle studies and that. Maybe Andrew has his finger on the pulse of this one too, but where are those at? Those studies are going back to EPA, right? And that's still in the last NIPD's permit was issued in July,
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so and we're up on what, a repeating 3-year cycle for reporting, 5-year
It's a
cycle,
5-year.
but in the meantime, aren't there quarterly submissions to the New Mexico Environment Department? Because they didn't do an
Believe so.
actual 401
Maybe
certification,
monthly.
right?
Yeah.
Monthly?
I
Okay.
believe so.
And we have noticed that there have been some troubles as far as not just shutting down to switch bays, but we had actually, I think maybe Andy put it together through the Watershed Association to start getting some notification down to downstream users. And that's been happening kind of sporadically, but we appreciate any word coming down that, hey, this batch is as bad as it smells when it gets to you at the head gate, right? So that's kind of important. But what's happening as far as corrective action or continual improvement on those, I guess, I'm not going to call them violations, but nonconformities that have been reported to EPA?
So
I guess they haven't resulted in violations, right?
yeah, see, Darren, I think this, and I don't want to get us off track. This is maybe should be a topic of discussion at the next meeting. Because some of these violations are tied to very stringent use of the effluent for non-potable uses, turf irrigation and human exposure. Those criteria are so strict that literally in the state of Washington, for example, I'm told the permit requirements coming to irrigate with that effluent are more strict than what you can swim in the state of Washington. Okay, so when you hear violation, put it.
Well, no, that's why I'm keen to use the word nonconformity. They're two separate animals. It's apples and hand grenades, a nonconformity and a violation. So what I'm really wondering is what we're seeing at the plant is, I guess, nonconformities in whose standard? Because that's where it ties in. If nobody's regulating it except EPA through the NIPD's permit, then the nonconformity is a violation. So is the plant getting fined or whatever? But like I say, as conservation manager, I don't expect you to have that information. So I kind of, I don't know, to ask Andrew.
If you could please, we can make it a topic for a future meeting, and Mike Dozier and Shannon. Yeah, we'll be on board.
Okay,
Great.
cool.
We'll include it as an agenda item for the next meeting.
And Carl, I see Tricia Snyder's on the call, which I greatly appreciate as well. And I'm wondering for a future agenda item, if the group would be willing, is I'd like to discuss the Forest Guardians plantings below the treatment plant, what the objectives were, what the intents, the O&M. I'm trying to learn the history of those wetlands and what they've evolved to. And so I'm reaching out to Tricia to try to tie that together at some point.
Tricia has recently just arrived in New Mexico. You're not even here a year yet, right?
Well, I'm originally from El Paso and spent a lot of time in southern New Mexico. So I'm not new to New Mexico, but I am new to Wild Earth Guardians. I came on at the beginning of this year. I don't think we've been called Forest Guardians since in a couple decades, but I am happy to add this as a topic to a future meeting and get the information if you want to send me some questions that I can dig up. But being a relatively new staff member, I don't have that information off the top of my head.
I do. Just in terms of I've gathered previously some press releases and that, and some information from the EPA and the Fish and Wildlife Service when the grants were initially issued. And so I can give you the background on it. And then what I think the biggest thing to mention is, again, is here's the Wild Earth Guardians participating actively in the collaborative, which that trailed off for a while, which I lost our Forest Service friend. Did Erin have to go?
Yeah, she had to leave.
Okay, well, but there again, there was, ongoing, and in this plan and in all the releases that came out in the pre-release of the final draft plan, was the talk about riparian treatment and beaver habitat and the Wild Earth Guardians participation with all three forests in managing those. And I thought there was an opportunity maybe, and I think we've talked about it before, and Bill was present too, with the just the lower river irrigators, is doing something to put this beavers in a more suitable habitat. What they're being forced to live in right now is it's wrong from a wildlife conservation perspective. But really what's happened, I think, to put it in a nutshell for you, the plan was well intentioned. It didn't actually, we're doing a lot of the lessons learned right now. It wasn't subject to the same type of participation and discussion that you're even having today, right? Virtually, much less taking and considering input and involvement from the local communities. And so it was myopic, and it developed into an obstruction as opposed to an enhancement to the environment. And we've kind of been, this group in particular has been working for the last 10 years to try and figure out how best to balance all of those concerns. Granted, they're more holistic, and figure out how we're going to maintain flow in that river and have some type of quality that's I think Ed Seary said it best when we were standing up there at the Petroglyphs parking lot, is that all these communities have the right to the same quality of water that's being delivered to hotels and restaurants and businesses there in Santa Fe. Is just because we're on the south of the city limits doesn't mean that we don't have the same right to the same quality of water that's being delivered to the city. So again, thanks for city participation on this level that respects that,
And to echo the sentiments in our one meeting with the Coche de Pueblo, the water quality and the effects of the impedance of flow in that river and the water quality concerns were expressed by them as well.
Excellent. Brian Berg, from many years ago, when he was attending our meetings, once described the wetlands as a poorly located demonstration project, and we've suffered the effects ever since. So it's something that's there and something we need to deal with, and it obviously it'll be part of the mitigation plan. So, and again, one of the things we do need to mention is that the city had an obligation to create a management plan for that area that got buried in the city bureaucracy and never came to light. And over 20 years later, we still don't have that and nothing's happened. And so all these things have to come together to figure that out and do something that is a good thing for the community. Now, if you look at some of the things that Biohabitats has been involved with, they can become like little nature areas and, nice nature walks and bird watching areas. And so those are the kind of things that obviously, I think as a community, we'd be interested, especially since it connects with the county open space. And Maria Lohman has joined us. She's with County Open Space. And so we have talked before about kind of connect, and now we may have a chance to connect these two things, which I think would be pretty exciting for the community. So.
Hey, Carl, if I can just tie it back into the history of it, that's basically what happened. Is for lack of a management plan, the original constructed wetland has gone out of control and had some numerous negative impacts. But it was for lack of a management plan and for lack of participation. And I guess, did we lose Mike Romero?
Yes.
Bummer, but I'm sure Maria can pass
Yes.
this on. Is again, the last maybe tangible that we had from the county perspective, because the wetland itself doesn't pay attention to whether it's city property or county property. Once Kaya Debra is all its own cesspool, then it just continues going. So, but really that was the idea. The last one we saw from the county was 2016, and it was coming from an open space and trails perspective, but ran up against what we've identified through the collaborative as a extant challenge constantly, is this interjurisdictional coordination, to where we can get across that property line and start, I think that was the intent of this group, was to get across the property lines and get the collaboration going where we could all work on the same project and have an integrated plan, city, county. That's what's nice to see about this. At least Pipeline is a joint city county, like Buckman was a joint city county. So this is a natural outgrowth of that. We have to manage this part together, because the wetland, yes, the city had a responsibility to make a management plan for it. Haven't ever seen it, but we saw the counties from 2016. Maybe that's something to build upon. And, instead of having to reinvent the wheel, the city jumps on and adds to, and it's a yes and instead of a no but, right?
I'm hopeful that we can add this to our future meetings here, because I think we're really hitting on a key point. It has been a point of contention, but I think I'm hearing enough potential agreements with respect to improvements, I won't call them mitigation, on the wetland area that could benefit everybody. And so, Carl, I guess I implore you to please keep this conversation alive. I mean, I will echo the sentiments that having wetlands adjacent to an airport are problematic from the city standpoint. And
Right.
That's just a
But they're there.
non-starter.
Yeah.
But everything else I hear is basically, I feel like there's enough common ground that we can make improvements to what's there now. And if the city was obligated to do that in the past, I guess I will apologize. I'm still trying to understand, to Darren's point, what those commitments were made. But all I could say is through this project and how we achieve the goal of a management plan, that will be a requirement in this planning process. We'll commit to it. So
we tracked down the management plan that was proposed by the River Commission that just got stuck in the bureaucracy.
that predates me, so I just
Yeah.
can't speak to it.
That's an interesting, if I can seize on that, that's an interesting occurrence. It's serendipitous. It happened right now. This is an issue that we've been talking about, is how we can make sure that our work and our plans are a living process that overarch or transcend the changes in staff, changes in administration. And I think that's what becomes a more distinct role of the coalition. Or maybe not, I don't know. The collaborative is important, and we have this consensus and we figure out ways to express it. Now, see, maybe Bill and Andrew, you take it back to the city from the staff level, and that permeates up. And then I think the role is for the stakeholders to have the coalition then present them to the respective decision-making bodies from the city and county. And that's where we start to crystallize what the roles of the two different outfits are. It's William.
William's got a question.
Or a comment. This is brilliant, Darren. I kind of wonder, we had a Metropolitan Water Board, and it was actually on our ballot. There was one member that was elected, by a vote, and two members that were appointed, I think one by the city and one by the county. But, and we've always been kind of saying, well, where is the Regional Water Authority? And it just came to light the other day that the joint city county water planning group that Anna Hamilton, commissioner, and city councilor Romero Worth put together, they haven't met in 3 years. And,
You have a county water policy advisory committee, and now there's certification coming out for the city. I can't remember the title of it. That's now
it's the River Commission that was looking. I saw that in the paper too.
Okay, and then also you still have,
Conservation Committee.
not sure what happened to the effluent reuse advisory committee.
Yeah,
So
we talked the other day on the Pipeline Coalition that there were a number of resolutions at both city and county to address this problem, and they're I guess they're buried somewhere. So I don't know.
or they've all resulted in these different little blossoms elsewhere, so I think we kind of need to round it all up, maybe. With all these.
Trying to keep positive here. I mean, we have in between the interim here, we have constructed with the county, the Buckman direct diversion. The Poake Regional Water System has been designed and the Indian settlements resolved. A lot has been done. Let's not lose sight of that.
But it's granted. However, we can still sit with the Santa Fe River traditional communities, and at least in the lower river, and sense that there's a lack of action in our reach of the river, right? So you guys have accomplished a lot. We just haven't seen a lot of results that I can quantify at the head gate. No.
So to that point, acknowledged, and hence why we had the unanimous approval of the city-county agreement on this project and the lower Santa Fe River planning process. Here we are. Let's do it.
Here we are. So that is positive. That is super positive.
Okay. And I do want to point out there are 4 openings on the River Commission. 3 of them are voting members. One is a kind of alternate that can attend meetings and will only vote if someone else doesn't show up, I think is the way it's done. So Andy, let's get that out to the Watershed. I'm not to the Watershed, even actually to the Watershed group, but also to the collaborative. If we can get that information out so they're aware of the opportunity to be part of the River Commission. It really is an opportunity to kind of have some sway with that and be more intimately involved with the River Commission. I encourage anybody to consider being part of that. Felicity?
About that, I'm just curious. I think the people applying have to be City of Santa Fe residents. Is that true?
Yeah. Andrew?
I believe that's true, and it's not because the entire commission is city residents, but because the vacancies are for city residents. Commissioner Hansen is one of the people on there, and she is definitely a very effective communicator and represents well the concerns of the county, right? But yeah, I think Felicity's right that the ones that are open now are supposed to be filled by people in the city. But I mean, there's people in the city who have, by all means, get your people on the committee.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then if I can make one other quick point, we haven't had a big meeting of the whole committee of the Water Policy Advisory Committee with the Conservation Committee, which is actually a different than the River Commission, which is the one that's hiring or looking for volunteers right now. But we have been working on some kind of side projects that include some members of both committees. And we have one individual who is our county representative on the Conservation Committee, who's also on the Water Policy Advisory Committee. So it does sound terrible when you say we haven't all sat down in a couple of years, but I think part of that's COVID, and we have been continuing to kind of chip away at it in small areas, looking for low-hanging fruit that we can address to try and establish a better cooperative relationship there. So just
That's where I'd like to
suggest
from since you've got it there coming from the city side, Carl, maybe you need to now, you've got the County Water Policy Advisory Committee needs to make sure that as an action item, there's a scheduled frequent meeting with the other one or two city agencies so that we're not off chasing our tails in different parts of the room, right? That at least all the doggies get to play together once a month or something.
William?
Well, on this conservation issue, our mutual domestics and our acequias have gotten written correspondence from the state engineer that, you better start looking at conservation. And, so I've been trying to put together conservation materials. Some stuff came out of with Roger Taylor and the Galisteo Mutual Domestic. And I published it for our Agua Fria Community Water Association.
Do you have a list of the mutual domestics?
No, but I think there's 45 in the county.
50. That's pretty amazing. I mean, that's one of those things it just kind of sent you. One of the things I wish I would have brought today, but I will share at some point, is Andrews is an amazing kind of history of wells in Santa Fe, where you go from, I can't remember the year 1950, 55 or something. And then you start looking at the number of wells every 10 years. And God, it's like the last 20 years, it just is, no wonder we have groundwater problems. Yeah, go ahead, William.
So Commissioner Anna Hansen has her tea under the trees at the Santa Fe, well, the Unity Resources Community Farm. And she had John Dupuy as one of the guest speakers. And they were kind of lamenting that they didn't have a list of wells. And I said, well, Andrew Erdman has it, so you might reach out to Commissioner Hansen because she really wanted that information.
It's funny, William, that you mentioned that. I will say for all of you in the county, I really think she's a very effective advocate for you, right? She just stopped me last night, 2 blocks from here, walking my dogs, where she was inspecting the city's water line installation process, right? Like, she is on it. And, so we actually have already discussed this because she was waiting for me right outside my house. So one of the things about the list I have is that those are all wells that were declared with the state engineer. A small portion of those probably didn't get drilled. And there's a large number of wells that are pre-basin. And actually, I suspect folks in Agua Fria are familiar with this distinction because people have feelings about the importance of having a pre-basin versus a post-basin well. But those aren't mapped for the most part. And some of that's because sort of in the early days, nobody really saw how many wells were coming. So the old locations tell you like what section the well is in. Well, almost the entire city is in one section, right? So that kind of information is too coarse for us to translate now. But I suspect, there's a lot of wells that people don't know about in Agua Fria in particular. An anecdote I can relate that gives a sense of it. There's the housing development, the construction that went on behind Lowe's, kind of by the Plaza Cafe on the south side there. They're doing more phases now, but when they did the first phase, I was still at the state engineer's office, and just in the area that became foundation, they exposed 5 wells that didn't show up on the map during the clearing of the land. And to the developer's credit, he stopped work and cleared all those and fixed them. So no need to worry about those 5, but just as an indication of how many wells there really could be that we don't know about.
I got a figure from Tomas Stockton with OSC that said there are 11,000 wells in Santa Fe County.
Yeah, that's just the permitted. So I suspect that's the low end of the count. Yeah.
Pretty amazing. Bill. You're muted.
Sorry, I got to drop off now, but thank you so much. I look forward to the
Drop off.
next meeting.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else tonight, folks, today?
I have a couple of announcements.
Please.
The Golondrinas Museum is having their 50th anniversary. And so we're doing a series of presentations on the lower river communities. William is on the agenda, she's one of the speakers. I think he's in a panel. Is that correct,
Yeah.
William?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
And I'm leading off with a kind of a overlay or an overview of the whole thing to start it off. And then from there, we're going into the archaeology, the geography. Well, I'm doing a lot of the geography, but the archaeology and then I'll be doing the history as well, emphasizing certain things along the route from the watershed all the way down. So that's coming up. It's going to be on Zoom and also Facebook, I believe. And because there's a limited audience, they've already invited, I guess there are 40 attendees that are going to be there at the educational center on site at Golondrinas, but it will be going up by Zoom and Facebook. The other thing is that, what was I going to say? Yeah, it's on November 11th and 12th. So it's a Friday and a Saturday. So
Thank you, Eladio.
Thanks,
You're all
Laura. Are
invited.
those gonna, sorry, I'm curious if those are gonna be available after the fact, or is it you gotta be there on Friday and Saturday?
that's a good question. Let me, I can find that out real quick. And then I can go ahead and send it to Carl and then he can get it out to everybody.
Thanks, I'll promise to pass it along, so it won't just be for my sake. I'll let people know about that too.
Excellent.
Wonderful, great.
William? And then Darren?
So at the September 28th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, Commissioner Hansen brought out the fact that the settlement annexation agreement, that the city hasn't complied with that since 2018. So, you know, and there's some huge issues in there. And I'm probably going to have a op-ed on it in Sunday's paper. But we just wrote a letter to the county yesterday saying that, they need to enforce it. Go back to the judge and say, this was the court order and the city hasn't complied in 3 years and, let's get with it. So we'll see what happens with that. And water is the underlying.
At the risk of blowing up your story, could I get like a preview of what we haven't done? Because I am not aware of that.
Well, there was 800,000 that the county transferred to the city to fix West Alameda. And the city and county used that. Well, the city asked if they could use that money at the Richards Avenue roundabout. So, but West Alameda languishes and it's a $8 to $6 million project. And, it's a safety concern, people driving on it. And I'm quite surprised that people haven't been killed on that road, at least to my knowledge, because on the north side's an embankment, the south side's a drop off. And, that's like the most dangerous road condition you could have. But, there's issues on Rufina Street, on Alfrea Street. It just, and I only know what people tell me. I could imagine if we advertise this in the New Mexican, all kinds of people are going to come forward and say, there's these issues and that issue. There's a lot of lands that were annexed along Airport Road that they're actually landlocked. So how do you address that?
Andrew will take care of all those issues for us. So thank
Yeah.
you.
The one piece of bright light I can offer, I know we're doing some looking a little bit at some of those areas kind of below Airport Road, south of Airport Road, to look at how to do utility stuff. And it's really preliminary at this point, but
Yeah. Well, the commissioner,
that's a
you
lot
know, we
more.
have our sewer project, and the commissioner actually went door to door to get easements for the sewer.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I actually think my wife went door to door with her. So
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Okay, anything else? Hey, Darren, what do you have?
Okay, one thing, just to take it back up out of the canyon and onto the mesa one more time, is it's the change of the season, and the lazy boys and sofa beds are sprouting and blooming again on the Caja Real Plateau, along with some more TVs and everything. So it looks like I'm just getting the messages that there's going to be another cleanup event, I think in the same area that we did last time, on the 30th of October, 10 to 1 p.m. You guys heard it here first. And of course, there's going to be a good feed of some kind. I'll try and talk them into chicharrones because it was Frito pies last time. And then, but those turn out to, as much as it's go pick up the trash from the cochinos that abuse the ejido up there. It's also a chance for us to get together and be in that environment and speak in that environment together, feeling that same feeling, right? Getting the vibe and start sharing our ideas again on what we can do to preserve that environment. It's all tied together. And again, sorry we lost our Forest Service people again, but it's time to jump in on that Forest Service plan and how that's continuing and follow up on the work that William did years and years ago, and that the communities were involved in years and years ago. And whether they have a formal stewardship program or not, it's I think what we've been doing together. So,
Darren,
October 30th, 10 to 1.
Yeah, thank you. Darren, I just did a search of that document, and there is the words agua fria are not in that document.
Yeah, Ladio's got a question. Ladio?
Yes, the presenter from the Forest Service, her name is Erin,
Yeah, Erin Barton.
E-R-I-N.
A-R-T-O-N.
Oh, A-R-T-O-N. Oh, yeah, Barton, right? Okay, Erin, but her E-R-I-N,
Correct.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
and what is her title?
Forest planner.
Okay. And how can I reach her? I
I'll
just
send
want to
you.
invite her, yeah, or if you could invite her to the, to the seminars that are going to be going
Okay.
on.
I'll
at
send you her
Golden Green.
email address too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Andy,
Carl, I have one quick thing, just a little bit lighter note in many ways, but October 22nd, 23rd, and 24th is our Hunt for Red Rocktober. It's a river and arroyo-wide cleanup day. You can sign up online, so there's not this stigma of gathering, or you can gather, and Amber will be there. And anyway, so you can check it out on our website, Hunt for Red Rocktober. We're going to have rocks that you can keep that are being painted by Meow Wolf. So it's going to be kind of cool.
how cool is that?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
How creative is that? That's really, that's
Well,
the kind of stuff the Watershed Association does.
Remember the submarine movie, The Hunt for Red?
Absolutely. Hunt for Red
Oh,
October. No. That was an interesting one.
I hate
So
submarines.
one real quick note, Darren, on the at one point the BLM enforcement officer was talking about putting cameras up to start see if they can start catching some of those people illegally dumping. So that's just a thought.
I'm going to tell you the irony of this one. There is one camera there at the gate before it goes off to the arroyo behind Hippico on 56 Charlie, right?
Yeah.
I just had, God bless him, resident BLM Ranger Stephen Cunningham show up in his vehicle in La Valhalla, asking the kids where Darren's at, and talked with him did some outreach and some local education. So he has a picture of my truck and trailer going up there to spot the 30-ton dumpster from the last cleanup event we did in July, right? When the laser sofa beds sprouted last time. So, and he was coming to inquire with me about what I was doing up there with the truck and the trailer, because he's got my, so they have a camera and there's some type of it. It evidently takes a few months to go do the enforcement rounds, because he was telling me he had been all over pa allá y pa atrás talking to everybody about illegal dumping on the Caja, but wasn't aware that we had done an event the day before and not only had one 30-ton dumpster privately from New Mexico Wild, but also had one provided by the county from Commissioner Garcia at like that. No, so anyway, trying to make those phone calls and tell him what we're doing, but I found it kind of ironic that there we were doing a cleanup event, he's coming to bust me for illegal dumping. So, but anyway, that turned out nice. So I've got his card, and I got to tell him we're going to be up there on the 30th.
Anything else today?
You can't make that kind of stuff up. No.
Listen,
Erin, I'm glad we didn't have to get you out of jail. But I have a question about where do you meet to join in at 10?
I think, and I didn't get this part, but the Petroglyphs parking lot is a good place there. Or what'll happen is we'll go up 56C, and if you have a truck or something that we can use to haul stuff back to the dumpsters, that would be great. But usually we'll go up there across from the Krigo mine. They call it camel tracks, right? 56C up to the Caja behind Hippico,
Yep.
Camel Tracks Road. Just outside the entrance to the Krigo mine, there's a spot where we'll set up the Scala and have some goodies.
Okay, cool.
anything else, folks? Yes, Maria.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all. I just wanted to give you a heads up that the county will be installing some pond levelers in the beaver dams along Calle Debra. We are waiting for procurement, but that should be happening in the next coming weeks. We know that those things have been there for a long time, but we're finally getting to a point where we can put some pond levelers in there. So you'll see us out there quite a bit, I would say, over the next few months. So just wanted to give you a heads up.
Thank you. That's great news.
A lot of good news today.
When was
Anything
the
else,
last
folks?
time we saw any game and fish participants in the
Been a while.
It's been a while.
Robert's not been.
Okay,
generally comes-
I'll ask my daughter where that's at, because a couple of those guys that used to come, I think, retired.
Okay.
Oh, could be. Yeah,
We
do.
need a welfare.
Yeah.
We need a welfare check on the rodents.
Okay.
And they should be humanely trapped and scoped out for what they're your best little barometer of the water quality there.
Yeah.
Remember the last time that we actually got data on the health of the creatures? They were run up with I think neutrimia, and had some other infections that they were not doing well. So it'd be good to get a welfare check from Game and Fish on that population.
Darren, could you send me a list of questions or something, and I'll forward them?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's probably time that it's been a long time since I've known what colonies are where, right? How many live dams there are. We should have a good survey. Maybe Tricia knows.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tricia.
Thank you, Tricia, as always. Okay, guys. Another thing we need to do, we got to get BLM back involved. But the problem with that, they've had so many changes there. Nobody knows who's in charge. But let me work on that. But they need to be here.
Yeah.
What?
Let me talk to my new friend and start inviting him to meetings, because that was his whole bag, was that this was his region of responsibility.
Go for it. Let's get him here.
Okay. All right.
I've been working with him on another issue, and he's very responsive and does like to come to community meetings.
Excellent.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. We should be dealing with him frequently. So there's some BLM presence. Who's the last guy we talked to from BLM? Was Sam Georges?
Please don't
No,
say
it
that
was
word ever again.
Victoria.
I know he's long gone, but
It was that woman Valerie or Victoria or,
The biologist used to come to our meetings all the time. White
Okay.
Miller, I can't remember, but yeah, she relocated to another area. But again, I mean, this is one of those meetings where I just come away and say, hey, we got some stuff accomplished today. And certainly brought out some issues that are very important to everybody in terms of what's happening with the river and the river area. So thanks to you all. Let's keep it up and keep communicating. And let's see what we can do to make the river a beautiful place again. Thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.